Okay, here we are. Welcome. It is the first Tuesday of the month, February 4th, so it is time for some reading sprints. This evening we are going to be reading our February book, The Beginning of Spring by Penelope Fitzgerald. So if you are joining us for that, that's what I will be reading this evening. But you can read whatever you'd like. So if you're joining us, please, in the comments, let us know what you're reading. And we'll be happy to have you. Now, before we get into reading this evening, we are going to share with you our selections for March. And I'll let Laura talk us through that. We are going to be reading for middle grade March, so we have some middle grade books.
Yep. Hi, everybody. Excuse me. We have 3 choices here. These were picked based on what Dani owned. So that's how these were chosen. So the first one up is The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. This was first published in 1908. And I think we're probably all familiar with this, but just in case. When Mole decides he has had enough tiresome spring cleaning for one day, relatable, the scrappy nonsuch throws down his broom and bolts out of his house looking for fun and adventure. He quickly finds it in the form of the water rat, who takes the wide-eyed mole boating and introduces him to the mysteries of life on the river and in the wild wood. Mole also meets Ratty's good friends, the kindly solid badger and the irrepressible toad. Soon the quartet's escapades, including car crashes, a sojourn in jail, and a battle with the weasels who try to take over Toad Hall, become the talk of the animal kingdom. Filled with familiar human types disguised as animals, Kenneth Grahame's The Wind in the Willows, like all exemplary children's literature, has always appealed greatly to grown-ups as well. Though first published in 1908 when motor cars were new and rare, The Wind in the Willows presents surprisingly contemporary and uproariously funny portraits of speed-crazed Mr. Toad, generous Badger, poetic Ratty, and newly emancipated Mole. And lurking all the while within the humor and good spirits, Grahame's deeply felt commentary on courage, generosity, and above all, friendship. So again, this is from 1908, and this is right around 200 pages-ish. Then next up, we have Caddy Woodlawn by Carol Ryrie Brink. First published in 1935, this has also won the Newbery Medal. Caddy Woodlawn is a real adventurer. She'd rather hunt than sew and plow than bake, and tries to beat her brother's dares every chance she gets. Caddy is friends with Indians who scare most of the neighbors who, like her mother and sisters, don't understand her at all. Caddy is brave, and her story is special because it's based on the life and memories of Carol Ryrie Brink's grandmother, the real Caddy Woodlawn. Her spirit and sense of fun have made this book a classic that readers have taken to their hearts for more than 70 years. And this is, I think, the longest one, like around 275-ish pages. And last up, first published in 1960, this is Island of the Blue Dolphins by Scott Odell. In the Pacific, there is an island that looks like a big fish sunning itself in the sea. Around it, blue dolphins swim, otters play, and sea elephants and seabirds abound. Once, Indians also lived on the island, and when they left and sailed to the east, one young girl was left behind. This is the story of Karana, the Indian girl who lived alone for years on the island of the Blue Dolphins. Year after year, she watched one season pass into another and waited for a ship to take her away. But while she waited, she kept herself alive by building shelter, making weapons, finding food, and fighting her enemies, the wild dogs. It is not only an unusual adventure of survival, but also a tale of natural beauty and personal discovery. So that's Island of the Blue Dolphins, and that's around 180 pages. So, yeah, these would all be great. I've read 2 of them before, and I look forward to rereading anything that gets picked. Or, I mean, I'm just excited about all of these. I like middle grade stuff very much. So, yep, you have a couple of weeks to vote, and our next live show is the 25th. That's the very last Tuesday. We'll be discussing Beginning with Spring by Penelope Fitzgerald. And the week after that, we will have the very first start for one of these books. So please get in your vote. And yeah, look forward to see what's getting picked.
Yeah. I like how these are all like classics. Like they're
Mhm.
older, so they're not brand new. They're not contemporary, so they're gonna be like old weathered stories,
Mhm.
so to speak. So that'll be a nice change for some of the books that we've read in the past. So yeah,
Mhm.
I know I will be starting beginning of spring this evening. You as well?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Okay,
Unless I
great.
can't handle the print anymore, then I might switch to something else for a while. But
Sure.
yeah, plan.
Okay. Is there anything else on your TBR that you have started here in February?
um, yeah, I of course, like most library book checkouts, I have 4 ebooks that all came in like a day apart. So the one I'm working on now, which I also own physically, is the 6th in the Miss Kopp series by Amy Stewart. So that's based on a real woman, Constance Kopp, Kopp, who lived in New Jersey, like the turn of the century. And she became essentially a police officer and broke all these rules. She became a PI, like very, very interesting woman. And so it's about her life with her older and younger sister. So now we started, like, I think 1908, maybe 1910, we met her at first. And now it's the middle of the First World War, 1918. So the 6th book is letters between all 3 of the sisters. So you get to see who's where, who's doing what, and their lives and everything. So it's epistolary, which is very much my jam. And I like all these characters. So that's the main one I'm focusing on now.
Very nice.
Yeah. What are you reading?
I've got a few things that I'm trying to start in February. I am trying to start a subscriber suggestion was actually suggested from some of my brothers that have read it, but The Name of the Wind by
Mhm.
Patrick Rothfuss, which what my understanding is it's supposed to be a trilogy, and there's the first 2 books, but it's been like 11 years, and
Right.
he still hasn't published the 3rd one, so
Mhm.
that leaves me hesitant to like read it, because if I do really like it, I'm going to be pretty upset but I mean, then I just have plenty of time to read the next one.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'm going to like it. Like, I don't know if it's my jam. I tried to start reading it last night. I think I was just too late in the night.
Yeah.
So I only read about 10 pages, and I was like, I can't read this right now.
Mhm. Yeah.
I feel like it's like it's gonna be another like Wheel of Time issue where I have to like get the audiobook and read it and
Yeah.
listen to it at the same time just to get through it, which isn't necessarily a bad thing,
Mhm.
but I hate using Audible credits on books that I'm not like real keen on.
Sure.
So I don't know. We'll see about that, because I do want to read it, because 2 out of 3 of my brothers have like told me I need to read this book.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get that. I did start the 2nd Zodiac Academy book,
Oh yeah. Mhm.
and I'm realizing like, so I do really like the story. But today I was even realizing, like, because I've told you this, like, the writing is terrible. Like, I
Mhm.
don't think the writing is good at all. But I'm like fascinated by the story, right? Today I was realizing, I was like, you know what? These writers, and there's 2 of them. So, like, you even have 2 brains working on this story. They really have not thought through the orders that all of these Fae students fall under. Because here's the thing, when you're reading a story and the author introduces some vampire character, what's the first couple of things that they have to do to help the reader understand what kind of vampire it is? Because, one, as a reader, we already have what we believe a vampire is, right?
Mhm.
So as the author, they have to say, well, this is what my kind of vampire is. So like for Stephanie Meyer, it's like if they go out in the sun, they sparkle and glitter.
Mhm.
For, Charlene Harris, she was like straight vampire, like can't go in the sun,
Mhm.
all the things that go with like the true
Mhm.
Bram Stoker's, vampire. In this one, none of that. I just realized that today. I was like, so the only thing that makes this person a vampire is that it sucks blood. That's the only
They can
thing.
go out in the day?
They go, that's what was tripping me up today. Because I was thinking about it, and I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, he just does whatever he wants, whenever he wants. I said, the only thing that makes him a vampire is that he sucks blood. And it's not even for sustenance. He still eats regular food. He sucks blood to restore his magic, because every order they have to restore their energies somehow.
Sure.
And the way he does it is by sucking the blood of another being. I'm like, so that's the only thing that makes him a vampire. Then I thought of some of the other orders, and I was like, okay, so then the werewolf, they haven't said anything about the moon. Nothing about the moon or the cycle of the moon. Nothing. And I'm like, okay, so the only thing, like, so he just changes whenever he wants. So he's literally just a shapeshifter is what he is. Not a werewolf, but he's called a werewolf, but he really is just a shapeshifter. Then, and excuse spoilers, but there is a Medusa.
Okay.
And when her stuff happens, everyone's looking at her. No one's turning to stone. So I'm like, okay. And that's what like was the springboard of me starting to think about this stuff, because I was like, oh no, don't look at her. Because I thought that was going to be like the thing. No. It was in an entire classroom full of people. People were taking pictures. People were looking. People were laughing. All the things. No one turned to stone. And I'm like, okay. Now you're starting to piss me off. Excuse my language.
Right.
Because I'm all about Greek mythology. I'm all about these kinds of things. And not that werewolves and vampires are, but like when you start putting in like hydras and medusas and all these things, I'm thinking like all the things that I know about these things, these creatures, and you're just making these orders, but you're not putting any of the actual affinities to them. And then the worst part of it is you're not explaining it. Because like I said when I started this weird rant, every book that you ever have read where a writer introduces something that the reader already knows about, they have to explain themselves so that it makes sense for their story.
Right.
And they're just completely disregarding that in this book. So though I am enjoying where this is going, and I don't know why I'm like invested. The storytelling, like, it's terrible. Like the writing is terrible. Like they're just not doing their job.
Yeah.
Like it's like two teenagers like let's write a story, but then they didn't do any research to like make sure that everything is properly backed up with like evidence.
Yeah, that would, I mean, I know, I tried this book series a long time ago and I could not hack the writing and I just thought it was dumb. So I just opted out, which is fine. So I want to hear what you're reading as you're reading it, like just personally. But yeah, that's true. Like if you're going to have a vampire, you have to say like what kind of vampire it is, or like he's a daywalker, or like this is why he can be outside. Like you have to explain basics, not huge amounts. You don't have to spend 45 pages on it, but like you do have to clarify some stuff. Just like with zombies too. What kind of zombie person is this? Is this a fast moving zombie or a slow zombie? Like, do they eat brains? Do they eat other stuff? Do they eat nothing? Like,
yep. Yeah. Because I was reading it last night, and because we haven't seen all of the orders yet, like, and there's a pretty big list. And Jessica's here. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Jess.
Thank you. So I'm talking about Zodiac Academy right now. We just started, and we were just talking about books that we're currently reading, and I'm just very annoyed. Like, I'm not any less invested because, like, I don't know what it is about this story that I'm like, I really want to know where this is going. But everything else about it is like rage baiting me because, like, for instance, I read Percy Jackson in my early 20s. It's a kid's book, middle grade read. Loved it. And Rick Ryerson, or however you say his last name, does a phenomenal job of incorporating Greek mythology in a way that is consumable to kids and is accurate to like Greek mythology. He does a phenomenal job. And when this Medusa character pops up in Zodiac Academy, my first thought was the scene in Percy Jackson where they're at the antique shop or wherever they meet. I think it's the antique shop where they see her, and they immediately are like, oh, we have to use the reflection to beat her because if she sees herself, she'll turn to stone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, in this book, nothing happened when this person turned her into her order, into her Medusa form. Her snakes are going every which way, all pissed off, and nothing. No one. They're all just like, oh, ew, like.
Oh my God.
So I'm pretty disappointed that there's just no, like, you're just using all of this already created fiction or myth, but you're not even using it accurately. Mm-hmm. So that was really annoying. Yeah. So sorry, I was reading Jessica's comments and then not putting up. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like you would blow through those books just because you're a pretty fast reader. They're like fantasy, young adult, but I don't know. I can't say that I feel confident recommending them to anybody because I don't feel like I rated the first one 3 stars because I couldn't give it any, because I enjoyed it, but the writing is terrible. I just know I have to keep reading because I want to know where it goes. Yes, we were excited for you to read with us. This was a book picked by one of our wow, members? I can't even think of words. I'm not feeling well today, so I apologize. One of our members, Allie, she had given us actually 3 books from the same author. So this was the one that was picked. And thankfully, I have access to it on Hoopla. So yeah, we're excited that you're going to be joining us. Yeah. Reading that. Are you going to be reading that with us this evening, or are you going to start it another time? But yeah, that's all I'm going to rant about that, because I mean, if you want to see more ranting about it, you can check out my YouTube channel. I think what'll end up happening is I'll try not to rant about it too much on my Friday Reads vlogs, but when I'm done with all 12, I might have to have a full series review and do a series rant, because unless it gets any better, like the writing or anything, which I'm having a feeling that it's not going to. Right. Yeah.
Is the series completed yet, or not really, or not yet?
I think it is 12 books. I think that
right. They're all done, though, I mean?
Yeah, because I think it's specifically 12 because it's 12 months.
Yeah, I know. When I was reading it, I think there were 4 or 5 that weren't written yet. It was early days in it, and I was like, well, if it's not even finished and I don't like this, I'm not around, So
no, I'm pretty sure, because it's on Kindle. It's on Kindle Unlimited, and I'm pretty sure that it says 1 of 12 when I was in there. But yeah. Oh, good.
Oh, excellent.
Oh, good. I did not even look on my Kindle Unlimited. I should have done that. I found it on Hoopla, so I didn't even think about looking at Kindle Unlimited. Anywho. Well, let's jump into our first sprint. While we get that going, I'll jump over to our community tab and put our March picks in, so anyone who wants to vote on those can jump over there and vote. I'll also pick an ASMR reading background. Do you have a suggestion on like what you want for tonight?
No, I don't think so. Let's see.
The beginning of spring. I could find something that's like spring-like.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, so it's 20 after the hour, so 25 minutes will bring us at 1:45. So we'll be back in 25 minutes, and we'll tell you how it goes, and we'll have another chatty bit.
Awesome.
Sounds good. Thank you for voting, Jessica. Appreciate it. Let's see here. There we go. Okay. So I got the poll up. So anyone who would like to vote on our March selections, that is up in our community tab. So if you want to head over there and vote, that'll be available until 2 weeks from now. So I think it's Monday the 17th.
That sounds right.
I was able to read one chapter, so
Nice.
I just got the gist of what just happened, that his wife left with the children, which is devastating. I mean, as a parent, that would be devastating to me. But his reaction is really weird.
Yeah, well, the children are back almost immediately. Spoiler, so.
Yeah, I had to go on Goodreads to put that I was currently reading this, and then I was like, what is this book about? Because I'm like, I don't even remember. So I read, and the second paragraph says that they only made it as far as the train station. So they'll be back. But I'm just like, what a weird reaction, like trying to just act really like nonchalant about it. It just like I'd be like questioning everybody in the house and like trying to get her back. Like, I don't know. Oh, whatever. We'll keep reading and see where this is going.
Yeah.
Read the first chapter, and so far I'm intrigued, loving the setting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I just got to chapter 4, so it's interesting. Yeah,
it reads very quickly.
Yeah, like, very.
Really plow through it pretty quickly.
Very, yeah. Yeah, it's sort of strange. It feels old-fashioned, but not. Like, you can tell it's a newer book, but it sort of feels old-fashioned still. If that makes any kind of sense. I don't know. It was just written.
I feel like the
88
writing is kind of ambiguous.
Yeah.
Because you have these characters that are being introduced on the page, but you're not getting a lot of information about it. And I think that's on purpose because it's presenting like a feeling.
Yeah.
Like a tone. It kind of reminds me of the way that Franz Kafka writes.
I've never read Kafka.
He's a very interesting writer. It's everything is so ambiguous and vague, and yet masterful. It's really hard to explain. But I was getting that kind of vibe here as I was reading. And because it's like in Moscow and we're getting all these like Russian names, it's making me think about Crime and Punishment.
Yeah. Ugh.
I know, right? So, yeah. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what this book is about, so I'm just gonna go into it blind and hope that I make it out in the end.
Yeah. I mean, right now we're jumped back in time and like you see like how they met and they just got married and now they're living in Germany. They're heading towards Russia slowly, sort of to go back to Russia, for him at least. It's just very. It feels kind of dreamy almost. Like, yeah, it's different.
Yeah,
I'm liking it, but it's just different.
Yeah. Will this be your first Penelope Fitzgerald book?
I think so. I should look at the beginning. Fiction. Yeah, it is. And for you too?
Yeah. Yep, I've never read anything by this author.
Oh, but that's not true. I read The Bookshop.
Oh.
I did like that. That was good. But
yeah. I have not.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anytime I read books, like historical fiction books, and they're set in England or whatever, I'm always like, someone's gonna die. like, it's not funny, but I'm just like, oh no, don't take your kids to England right now. Like, it's not a good time. It's not all it's cracked up to be right now.
Yeah.
I'm about to go into like a decades age like blitzkrieg. So let's just calm down a little bit, and I'd stay in Russia right now if I was you.
Yeah. I know. I was thinking too, I don't know anything about Russia before the First World War. I mean, I know about the Tsars, roughly, and like Catherine the Great, but then it's sort of just like a general blob of war happened, and I don't know much about anything really. What it was.
Well, they went through a huge revolution.
Well, okay, yes, but I mean,
yeah,
like 1913. I don't know what was going on in 1913. You know.
Yeah, I think it's about the same time. I think it's hard. I think for me, it's hard to think about it being at the same time, because I'm pretty sure, without looking it up, I think the last royals, which were like Anastasia and all that, they were killed right around the same time that like the world's wars were, because for a long time there was the mystery behind if she was still alive, and that was while we were alive. So I'm pretty sure they were going through a huge revolution around the same time as all of the world wars were happening.
Right.
But in my mind, because of the way we learn things, it's always like everything's happening like linearly. So when you learn it, you're like, oh, this happened then this happened, then this happened, instead of everything happening together. I don't know if that makes any sense. But that, in my mind, I always have to remember, like, a lot of history all happens at the same time, just in different locations.
Yeah, I know. For me, like when learning stuff, it's all like little circles or little pockets of stuff, just randomly scattered. It's not on a timeline at all. So it's like, oh yeah, this happened, and then this happened, and this happened. Even though it's all like in a different order, I can't merge things together in my brain that well.
Yeah.
So everything exists separately.
Yeah, what I would like to do, because I don't know why like the world wars are such a huge pocket of interest to me. I think because of what it did is it really set off the explosion of everything. Like the Industrial Revolution, technology, everything. That was like the catalyst. What I want to do is like, I really want to learn how every country, how it was truly affected, because I think when we learn about it, we are so streamlined as a country to only really learn about the United States and like how we are so amazing. That I want to know, like, because through our book club, we've read books from like the Chinese perspective, and I never even thought of China and World War II. Like, it doesn't even cross, like, and so as I've been reading books, especially through book club and everything, and we've come across books that have had that as a topic, it's like I'm so interested. So this being a fictional book, but my goal would be to try to read nonfiction works that are surrounded that time period, but from the perspective of everything not United States.
Right.
Because it affected the whole world, obviously, World War, and I really feel like we only get the United States and European point of view in most historical fictions. So I don't know. That was a weird rant for me, but anywho.
I know what you mean, though. I mean, what always surprised me too is thinking of, especially compared to the USA with England, like after the Second World War. I mean, America just was like advancing, and like any kind of like impositions on food or anything else went away. It seems like fairly quickly. and it just sort of everything just exploded. Like the like food complex totally changed everything, and TV dinners, and technology in general just went like crazy, super advanced. And England sort of stayed the same and had food restrictions for a long, long time. It seemed like the dark ages until like the 70s or 80s almost sometimes. It just seems so far behind us in some ways. Then it just seems so strange because we're so similar. I know we're different countries, but there's so many similarities. And to have that like really leg of difference in like household plumbing even, like it just is so strange to me that there's such a huge difference. I think about that a lot. Like it just seems weird to me. But of course it's way different, and we're thousands of miles apart, and they were obviously much more involved directly and physically affected. We weren't affected at all that much. I mean, Hawaii, yes. California, maybe a little, but like that was it. There was no fighting on the ground here, so yeah. And I've always liked the time between the wars, in particular, like what was going on, and I just, I think it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
I wish I could be a full-time student like for my entire life and not have to like write papers necessarily, because Barf wants to do that. But I mean, just to keep learning and reading books and stuff. It's just, oh God, I wish I could be a full-time student forever.
I feel like we can do that. You just have to do it.
Right, but I mean, like, that's my job, is to just keep learning, not like, oh, I have to go work and like take care of dinner. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to like just study and learn and have a good time.
Yeah, I always enjoyed being in the classroom, and except when I was skipping class, but wasn't all the time. So many classes I didn't like German. Yeah, my German teacher was on to me. I always wondered, like, I get like there's an attendance policy, but I'm paying for this class, so if I want to hinder my grade by not showing up, that's on me. And if I can pass your class without showing up, that's on you. I said that to one of my professors, who he's on my Facebook, so I mean, it is all good. But I said to him, I said, if I can pass your class without being in class, doesn't that say a lot about you and not about me? And he kind of looked at me and he said, if you do not show up to my class, I'm failing you. I'm like, okay. But I mean, I remember one of my journalism classes, we would have reading sections to read, and then we would show up to the class and the professor would read the section. That's how he would teach the class. And it was like, wait a minute. We just read this last night. All you are doing is rereading it to us. That's all you're doing. You're not even saying anything more. You're literally just reading it. It was terrible. It was so bad. That was the worst class ever. It was like, I think it was like law and ethics or something like that in journalism. And we had this huge textbook. We had to read a whole chapter, and then he would read as much as he could in that hour. And that's all we did. No, I mean, sometimes people would raise their hand and like ask him to like explain something that was hard to understand, and he would just like reread it. I was like, you're not even teaching anything. It was terrible at first. I wanted to skip that class every time because I'm like, this is pointless.
Yeah.
This is literally pointless, but whatever. But yeah, I always liked being in the classroom with classes that I really enjoyed and teachers that I really enjoyed. So, yeah. Anywho. Okay, so it is on the hour, so let's do another sprint. Let's do a 30-minute sprint this time.
Sure.
Let's try to plow through a bunch of this book here. So we'll come back at 30 minutes after the hour.
Okay.
If you're just joining us, welcome, and we hope you have some good reading in this sprint. So again, we'll come back 30 minutes to the hour. I'll put our ASMR back on, and we'll see you when we come back.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's see. Oops.
How'd it go?
Good. Hello, is it Cassie? Welcome.
Hi, Cassie.
And thank you for sharing, Jess. We appreciate you.
Excuse me.
Let us know what you're reading. Yeah, I made it to chapter 4. So, chapter 3 was basically what you were mentioning, how they met and whatnot. I don't know that I'm enjoying this writing style because it feels very fragmented.
Yeah.
I don't dislike it, but I'm feeling very, like, I feel like I'm reading through it very quickly because it is very consumable. It's reading very quickly, but because of the way that it's written, it feels fragmented. So I'm like thinking I'm missing something, like I'm missing things. So then I like backtrack a little bit to like reread paragraphs because it's so ambiguous and it's not very descriptive. I don't know, it's hard to explain. It's not bad, but it's a little disorienting, I think, for me.
Yeah.
Based on other books that I've read that are a little bit more descriptive. So yeah, I mean, we'll see how this goes.
Yeah.
How about for you?
Good. I'm in chapter 9, page 79. Yeah, it's sort of strange. It feels sort of dreamlike, but not like you're sunk in a dream, but like you're just sort of drifting asleep. That's how the whole thing feels. It's kind of surfacey, I guess. I don't know.
It's a lot of dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Like the majority of the page is dialogue. So when as you're trying to understand what's happening, you have to discern it through the dialogue, which is it's like almost like half thoughts. Like they're not full.
Yeah.
They're not full thoughts.
The dialogue does slow down quite a bit after where you are.
Yeah.
It's a lot more of like so and so is thinking this, and like a little backstory of why so and so is thinking this now, and yeah. I don't know.
Looks like Jess decided to finish off another read, Crossed Skis, a murder mystery.
Nice.
Ooh, and you loved it. Very nice. And Cassie, 56% through Bookshops and Bone Dust.
Nice.
I have to look what that is, because that is a very interesting title.
The second one in the series, right, Cassie? The or the first one. Travis Baldry, you know, Cozy Fantasy. Why can't I think of the first one?
Oops.
Yeah, that one.
Legends and Lattes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, that's an interesting cover. I'm gonna have to add this to my want to read list. It says Legends and Lattes number 0. So that's what Goodreads says. Yeah, it says number 0. Oh, okay, yeah. So that's number 0, and then Pages to Fill is 0.5, and then Legends and Lattes is number 1.
Yeah.
So what she's reading must be a prequel.
Yeah, it should be the second book. I mean, second published in the series, but it is a prequel. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's a number 2, which is Brigades. Is that how you spell that? Brigand? And bread knives. I'm really liking the cover of these. I'm going to put this in my want to read. See if we have access to that. Maybe it's on Kindle Unlimited.
I don't
Oh yeah,
think
here
that.
she goes. It's the prequel
Yeah.
actually, but it came out after Legends and Lattes.
Mhm.
It's so fun. Yeah, I'm putting this on my want to read. Thank you for letting us know what you're reading.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had Legends and
I need
Lattes on
more
my
to read.
shelf. Yeah, I've had that on my shelf for I think 2 or 3 years. I just haven't gotten to it so far. I will eventually, but I will.
Yeah,
Because I think I'll really like it. It just seems so nice.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's these, coming to these things. It's hard. I mean, we get recommendations left and right, and then
Mm-hmm.
here we are.
Mm-hmm.
I a lot of times too on Goodreads, because you can see what the people you're following or the friends that you are, what they're reading.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always like, oh, what's that? Oh, what's that? I'm terrible. I have so many like want to read books that I end up tapping on. I'm like, when am I ever gonna get to all of these books?
I know.
Let alone all of the physical TBR books that I have in the other room that I never get
know.
to, which I really need to, like really bad.
Mm. I know. I hear you.
Yeah.
Mm.
Ugh.
But I do a lot of library ebooks of physical books I own, so it's like two birds with one stone. So
Yeah.
if I want to read later at night, I can read those in bed on my Kindle, and
Mm-hmm.
that's like getting somewhere with something because oh my gosh, I have to. It's ridiculous.
I'm actually surprised. So I had, I think like maybe 2 months ago, I think it was like at the end of November or maybe December, I had signed up for Kindle Unlimited
Mm-hmm.
uh, while I was doing that Grace Goodwin project.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really happy that I kept it because,
Yeah.
I mean, I've really been reading a lot from there.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it's been worth it.
Yeah.
And it was funny because, like, I've been so against getting that because I'm like,
I know.
no, I don't think it's worth it. Like, I don't read enough on ebooks. And now it's like at night, it is so much easier for me to read on my Kindle than it
Mm-hmm.
is to read a physical book. And not that because I have like the light and everything, but to turn the pages and like sometimes the light reflects weird on the page. And especially so to kind of show you what I'm talking about. Sorry. Ugh. So I was trying to read this last night. Okay, so I have this huge book. And so when I hooked up my light to the book, you hook it up on the back of the book here like this,
Mm-hmm.
okay? But look how much the book takes up of the light. So then when you
Yeah.
have it open, it's like reflecting like right on top of the page. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm like laying here like trying to like see the words because the light was too close,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, okay, this is too much. I can't read this book right now in the dark.
Yeah.
So I mean, I can't believe I'm reading this book. um, but yeah, so it's nice to have the Kindle. It's not a Kindle, but I'm just gonna call it a Kindle. At night because I don't have to worry about any of that. I can dim the light as much as I want, and then I can just flick through it, and it's a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I will say that I don't like that I mean it's just oh well is that because I've been reading so many fantasy books on here, so many of them have like maps or like lists
Yeah.
sometimes that I want to be able to page back to. And when I have a physical book, usually what I do is I'll put like a bookmark where the map is or where
Mm-hmm.
like the list of whatever creatures I'm trying to figure out. So I can like go back when something happens and I'm like, oh, I want to I want to reference that. I can't really do that with the Kindle. Like I could try
Yeah.
to like go back in the table of contents, but it's so cumbersome that I just go, well, whatever. I'll just have to not worry about that. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
only thing I don't like, which isn't a big deal if you're reading like a different book that doesn't have that kind of thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely like, dang. So, oh well.
Yeah.
Just making sure you know that if you end up loving that book 3 has been in the works for years. Yes, no. So so I have 3 brothers, and 2 of them have been recommending me that book for ages. And one of them recently suggested it again when I did my call for subscriber suggestions. And he's like, you really need to read this book. And so I said, I'm like, okay, I'll read it. He's like, oh, but by the way, it's supposed to be a trilogy, but the third book, it's been like 11 years since the second one was published. So don't hold your breath on that one coming out. And it's actually a Wisconsin author. So I was like, well, I'll just find out where he lives. I'll go knock on his door and let him know everyone's waiting.
Yeah. If you weren't aware. Yeah.
So yeah, I am aware, and I have a feeling that I'm probably not going to care to continue, because I don't think it's the kind of fantasy that I'm into. Like, so I've read like 10 pages. So, I mean, I'm speaking too soon, but it very much feels like Wheel of Time to me. And not that Wheel of Time was a bad book, but that epic fantasy to me is not really my jam. So I'm feeling like I might like this. It might be a good read, well written, but it's probably not going to be something that I continue in. So I'll probably be fine to not worry about the fact that there is not a third book. But again, I could be talking way too soon. But I'm actually surprised that my brother liked this book because, again, I'm 10 pages in and there's a guy that like walks into this tavern with like a stone spider that's the size of a pig, and my brother is so deathly afraid of spiders. And I'm like, I can't believe if this book has these crazy spiders in it, like I can't believe he read this book. I mean, when he was on Facebook, I used to send him scary spider things all the time. So yeah. But apparently the author has said that this is the year. Oh, sure.
Oh, we'll see.
We'll see. We'll see. But I haven't picked up the second one. Yeah, like I said, I have a feeling it's not going to be like a book I'm going to be racing for. But my brothers are usually pretty good at picking out good books. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm just not like a huge epic fantasy fan. It's a little bit too much for me. I guess it just depends. I don't know. It's never really hit me in the right tone. I'm more like, I like Deborah Harkness writing, like where it's with witches and vampires and all that stuff, but it's like in modern times. It's historical. It's, I don't know, romantic, but not like, it's not like a spicy book by any means. It's just like fluid, and I don't know. And then of course all the YA stupid fantasy that I read that always somehow makes it into the shuffle.
Yeah.
I think it's more like that just reminds me of like what I used to read, so it's like more nostalgic. So I'm just like, oh, this is great.
Sure. And it's going to be a quick read regardless,
Right. Whereas this book, it's like the words are like this tiny, and it takes me like 15 minutes to read one page. So it takes forever to read the book. But yeah, I never understood why they felt like these size books should go into a mass market size book. Like, why? Why does it make sense to put this big book? And this is only 700 pages, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But I mean,
it looks enormous.
It looks enormous. I mean, I was like, this has got to be like 1,500 pages. And then I opened it up and I was like, oh, 722. But I mean, look how thick that is.
Yeah.
And the pages are not thick, but I mean, why did I agree to do this?
Can you find another copy of the thrift store that's trade paperback size?
This is from the thrift store.
I know, but that's mass market. Like,
I know. I picked this up because I had never seen this at the thrift store ever. And my brothers keep recommending it. So I picked it up And then literally like a week later, I put the subscriber suggestions out there. And then my brother said, you need to read that book. And I was like, oh, just so happens that I just picked it up.
Mm-hmm.
And when I picked this up, there were 2 copies. And this was the better of the 2, but they're both this mass market size.
Yeah. Shoot.
I think I was telling you this off camera, but I think what I'm going to end up having to do is I'm going to have to go on Audible because I couldn't find this anywhere else like available.
Mm-hmm.
On Libby, it's like a several months hold.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what I'm going to have to do in order to be able to get through this book is I'm going to have to use an Audible credit.
Yeah.
And get it on there and just listen to it because for some reason, books like this, I cannot physically read because it's so daunting. Yeah. I mean, this is probably like a 26-hour book. And I could get through it in like a couple days on Audible because I listen at 2 1/4 speed. So it's going to be like 13 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But trying to physically read this, like I get so overwhelmed and I can't get through pages. My mind wanders and then I have to reread the page. And so I might just have to suck it up and do an Audible credit. So, yeah, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll probably be able to better understand it if I do it that way. But are there any books that have ever been that way for you, or you just like had not get through it?
Yeah, I mean, when we tried to read Sanderson, was that Warbreaker we tried to read, or whatever with that group? I think I was so intimidated by everyone because everyone read it except for you and I. It was a reread for everybody else. Mm-hmm. It was both of our first Sandersons. I felt like I was just chucked in the deep end, and like all those concerns I had about like, hey, so I'm like 100 pages in and nothing is happening. I don't know what's happening or who, if anything, or what. I don't know anything about anything. Like, does this get better? They're like, yeah. And like after page 500, it picks up. And my brain was like, I'm sorry. No, like, no, I don't want to do this. But I've always been like, I mean, my family is extremely small. I'm an only child. I only had one cousin I was ever barely close to, who is now passed. But he was always way into fantasy stuff, like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and, like now I'm finding out like after since he passed now, like The Witcher and like tons of epic high fantasy and everything. So he was always reading it and it was around. He's quite a bit older than me too. And I always wanted to be like him and get into this stuff because I mean, also I was an 80s baby and an 80s kid. Like all the stuff for kids was fantasy and all terrifying and dark as hell. So like fantasy is very much something I'm always been interested in and really wanted to read, especially epic stuff. But then now trying to read it as an adult, my brain is sort of like, I don't know if I can do this. Like I'm trying to read I forget what the quartet is called, but it's like Malice, Valor, whatever that is by John Gwynne. I'm trying to read that and my brain is sort of like, why are we reading this? We could be reading something else. And there's no reason why.
That those are written by?
John Gwynne.
Yeah, I was just recommended a book by him.
Yeah.
Shadow of the Gods or something like that.
Yeah, that's the next series. I think they're related, but I don't know if they're like back to back.
Okay.
But yeah. So I know like vaguely this one is about like it's a sort of feudal-ish like vaguely medieval fantasy land or whatever, and there are worms and there are giants that are in the story, and it's about all these like battles and stuff and whatever else. Like all that stuff is perfectly fine. If this was a movie, I would be eating the shit out of this stuff. But like I have such a hard time reading it physically. It's got to be hardcover or trade paperback. I can't do mass markets for fantasy. I just can't. My brain is like, what are we, crazy? Like we're not doing this. But even still, I have such a difficult time. So I want to read it. Maybe like you, it's listening is the way to go.
Yeah.
But then I have so much other stuff on my shelves. I'm trying to get through the things I already own. And the fantasy I do own is like few and far between. That's epic, big, chunky fantasy. I own like lots of, like you said, more YA kind of stuff. Or stuff that's like lightly magic or like has a wizard, but it's not this full-blown world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have a lot of that stuff, but not high fantasy. I keep trying, but yeah, my brain just kind of goes, well, look, if there's this other book we could be reading. And the size doesn't intimidate me so much. I mean, I do kind of go a little bit, but I've read other books that are just as long or longer in much shorter time periods and not blinked,
I know, that's what I feel like, because like I said, that's probably like a 26-hour book. I mean, I read all of Rebecca Yarros' books, which are all like 700 pages long, in like 6 days.
Yeah.
Like, and yes, it's a little bit easier because it's YA, and I don't think the writing is that fantastic, but it's still the hours, it's still the amount of pages that you're reading. And this one is terrifying. Like, I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna be able to read this mass market. Like, it's not, it's physically not, just impossible for me. It's just not gonna happen. So I even like mathed it out. I'm just like, okay, if it takes me 20 days to read this book, how many pages do I have to read? And it was like 35. And I was like, oh, I can do 35 pages a night. Yeah. Literally, I was like 5 pages in. I was like, this is never going to happen. It's like, there's no way, because like I said, it was taking me like 15 minutes to read one page. I was like, no, there's no way. And especially with the light and trying to like hold it, and like, and you know me, like, I hate a cracked spine more than anything in the world. So I'm like holding the book so precariously, and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this.
Yeah, you're going to have to crack it. I mean, you're just going to have to read it, because that's what I do with my mass markets now sometimes too. If they're that fat and it's that tight of a thing, I do just crack it, or I bend as far as I can. Like, like when you get a new journal, like you open it up and you like push the pages down 1 or 2 pages at a time, you flip back and forth.
Yeah.
So it's flexible, but it doesn't bend. It doesn't crack. So it just moves. I do that with mass markets too. But if they crack, those I don't care about cracking so much, though I'm careful. And I'm just realizing too, my mom gave me back recently. Most of the stuff that I read, I pass on to my mom if I think she'll like it, and she gives it back to me. Both of us have read this book over weeks each, and it looks like nobody has ever touched it. That's how we both read books. Like, everything is pristine. The corners are sharp. Like, not even the hint of a bend of anything. Like, it kind of cracks me up. And then my friend Jenna, she gets a book and she will break the spine like 3 places immediately, and like fold it in half and hold it in half and underline and dog ear and everything. And
oh God,
I know,
makes me want to throw up.
Funny.
I had, when I was in college, there used to be this book, I don't know if it's still there, but there used to be this bookshop downtown, and I used to go there like weekly, and the owner would let me, she had like a ton of advanced reader copies, and what she would do is she would let you take them and all like for free, and all you had to do is like write a little review that she could post on her website and then at the bookstore. So every week I would go down and I would get a new advanced readers because it was free books, And I got I can't remember the author's name, but it was a YA book called The Summoning, and I had read it, and I had done a few little writings in the margin stuff because there were a few errors, obviously being an advanced reader's copy. I just had marked a few places for my own because it was confusing. So I was like, okay, this is what this actually means. And then I had lent it to a friend. Oh my gosh, this book came back to me. The entire spine was like cracked in like 7 different places.
Oh my God.
And then she had written all over this book, like all over this book, like in every chapter, it like in like little summaries, everything. And I'm just like, at what point in time did you think it was acceptable to take a book that someone gives you to share, and because you saw that I wrote on like 4 pages, that you're just going to write all over this book? I was so mad. And yes, it was advanced reader's copy. It was free to me. But I was just like, I never lent that girl a book ever again. I was like, nope, not ever happening again. I was so disappointed. So disappointed. Yeah. Cassie, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you. And thank you for the recommendation. I hope I find that book, because y'all making me very interested in reading that. So thank you very much. Thanks, and we hope to see you again. So yeah, I was so mad. I was so mad. And I remember she had like given it back to me like in a public setting, so I couldn't like say anything because and I could tell like right away that I was like, I was gonna have a moment because I could see the spine, and I was just like, and she's like, well, I made a few notes. And I was like, what? You what? You made a few notes? who authorized that?
Right.
And then when I opened it, I was like, oh my gosh, you did like a book report. Like, it was terrible. I was so mad. So mad. Yeah. Ugh. Have you ever done that? Lent a book to somebody and they give it back to you in like terrible condition?
Yeah, for a while, if it was a book that I knew would be popular or I thought someone would want to borrow it from me, I would find a $1 copy at the clearance section at Half Price Books, and I would buy a lending copy, and that's the one I would lend out to people because that one would get destroyed. That would still piss me off, but that one would get destroyed and beat up and like, like curled edges and whatever else. And after I got annoyed enough, after one or two times, I would just recycle it. I was like, no, this is disrespectful to the book. Like,
Yeah.
I would recycle it. So I would lend occasionally, but I would be like, look at how this book is now. Look at the book I'm reading. I'm 300 pages into this book. Can you tell I've ever opened it? This is how I read my books. Can you
Yeah.
keep the book like this? Otherwise, I'm not lending it to you. You can go to the library. Everyone's like, oh my God, you're so picky. And I'm like, yeah, I spent $18 on this. Of course I'm picky. This should look like I'm giving it to you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to do that, then no, I'm not lending this to you.
Yeah.
I'm not super chill about this. Like,
Jessica does not lend books.
Yeah. I extremely rarely do.
Yeah. I don't. The only person I really lend books to now is my mom. And half of that is I know that she's not actually going to read it. So at some point, I just go back to the house and I read.
Just take it back.
I take it back. She has been getting better as of late, which is really interesting. Or what'll happen is when she goes out to the thrift store, she'll be like, "Are there any books here that you want?" And usually what I'll do is like, "No, but that book I have, and you should read it too." And then she'll get it. So she just finished a book that I had mentioned, Sold on Sunday. She read that, and it was one of the books that I was like, "Oh yeah, you should pick that one up." Because yeah, I've stopped lending books to people just because like there was a while where I wasn't getting any of the books back. And like, especially because like the transition from college to like real life, you have some of those friends, and then like all of a sudden, just like high school, you start to drop seeing people or knowing people. So there's a lot of books that like left my shelves that I like never got back.
Yes.
And it's, like when you buy books, you buy them specifically to have, not to just like buy books and hand them off to people. So yeah.
What irritated me once too is this one of the Marys I worked with. You do need revision in your family. So at my corporate job, I think there were 5 Marys that worked there. So one of the Marys who worked like in a cubicle near me and knew I was a weirdo about books and like whatever else, she said I was reading The Good Earth. And she said, I wouldn't ask if she said, but would you mind if I borrowed that when you're done? She said, that was one of my favorite books when I was in high school and I haven't thought about it for years. I see you reading it. Would you mind? And I said, I'm weird about books, right? Like you have to be particular. She said, absolutely. I will be totally pristine about it, whatever. And she was fine. So she had it for like 6 months and then she was reading everything else but that book. So she gave it back to me and I was really sweating it. Like, that's terrible. But I was really like, why'd you ask me for this if you're not going to read it? Not that I expect you to read it immediately, but like, in the next month, you should probably start it, I was sort of thinking. So she gave it back to me, and I was like, oh, thank God. And then she said, could I borrow it again? I never got around to it. And I was like, okay. And then I never saw it again.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted to be like, lady, go buy your own copy. Like, what is wrong with you? And I should have just said no, but
yeah. I never borrow books. I never borrow books from people because I know, like, either I'm not going to read it, I'm not going to read it fast enough, or in my head, I'm thinking, like, I would be thinking, they're probably, like, sitting there, like, when are you going to read my book? When are you going to give it back? You're going to make it, like, so I never borrow books from people. I'm like, no, thanks. I'll find it myself.
Yeah.
This is a good point too. Your sister wants a buddy read, but then it takes her a year to finish the book.
Oh my gosh.
5 minutes to discuss it. So I recently saw this
that's frustrating
video on Instagram or wherever, and it's a clip, I guess, from one of the Captain America movies or something, where he's training with the new Captain America, or I don't know. I haven't watched any of the movies, so I'm not really sure. But for this this image.
Mm-hmm.
He like runs past him because he's like faster, and he's like to the left. I'm on the left or whatever. But the words that are on the screen is like me reading with my friend.
Yeah.
It's like we pick the same book, and it's like to the left, and it's like runs past, and then like onto the second book to the left. It's
Yeah.
like, and it made me think of you because you wanted to read all those ACOTAR books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm like done, and you're
Mm-hmm.
like still on the second one.
Can't get into the second one. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is usually the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Usually you
Yeah.
are the one that's like already done with the book, and I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm on chapter 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought that was really funny.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't send it to you though because I didn't want to make you feel bad. But I was
No.
like, I had to send this to Laura. I'm like, no, I probably shouldn't because then she'll feel bad and she'll feel like she has to read it. But I don't think you should finish. But yeah, I laughed so hard because I'm like, that is so true.
Mm-hmm.
And Jessica, I mean, you've read with me before. Usually we keep pretty good pace, but you definitely read a lot faster than I do. So I have to be like really so. In our community, in the booktube community, and after this we'll get back to reading, I promise. When we buddy read with someone, and especially if we ever buddy read with them again, you start to like pick up your buddy reader's nuances and like how fast they read. And so certain people, like if they ask me to buddy read, I'll be like, okay, do I have the
capacity?
time?
Yeah.
Because sometimes like, okay, one of my best buddies on BookTube, I love her to death, Emily, from novels.
I love her so much.
Oh my gosh, you really have to prepare because she is the fastest reader I have ever met in my entire life.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's
truly amazing. It's like, so I'm like, I'm like, there's nothing else I'm doing. I have to read this book and I have to read it fast and I have to be prepared because like, if you are bringing your thoughts on Saturday, you better be ready at 12:01 because Emily reads so fast and she never misses a beat. Yep. So, I mean, you really have to prepare. And there are other readers too that I'm like, okay, I've got to make sure that I'm on the ball when I'm reading with certain people. And then there are other readers too where I know I'm like, okay, they usually like are more laid back, so like I can be a little bit more laid back too. But yeah, every time I think like if we ever like, because you're in that group too where we do the Steinbeck, I'm just like, okay. I gotta be ready. It's gotta be a good month.
Yeah.
It's gotta be a good. I can't be in a slump. I've gotta like make sure I read this because she is like on it. She's the first one to respond. She's the first one to get her thoughts out there. Right. And I love it. I love her for it. But it's like,
oh, I do too.
For me, I'm like, I gotta make sure that we're on the ball here.
Yeah. Like as an example, I forget what book it was. We've read several books together, but say the book is like 600 pages, right? Like, okay, we're gonna read this like throughout like the month, maybe like we'll take another week or something if we need it, you know, kind of roughly read 100 pages a week, right? Like we'll kind of go for that. And if you read a little more, a little less, it's fine. So that's sort of what we talk about. And like the next day, she's like, oh, I'm on page 468 and I already blah, 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 blah. And we're all like, I'm
on page 4.
Yeah. Like, I think I'm on chapter 3. Like it's amazing. And then she finished it immediately. She's like, oh my gosh, I have so much to discuss with you. Like I learned so much and this is so interesting and blah, blah, blah. And we're all like, oh,
yeah, it's amazing. It's so fun though.
It's really amazing. I love her so much too, but it really is funny. Like,
the amount of pages that she gets through is incredible.
It is.
Like, I love it, but I'm like, I gotta be on my toes. I gotta be ready. Yeah. Like you have to like get mentally prepared because you're like, you want to keep up because she's like, it's not only that she's able to read all of that, but then she's able to like discuss it. Like, I mean, and you know, she's reading other books too. It's just, yeah, she's amazing. She's like superwoman when it comes to reading.
I know.
There are buddy readers that I've stopped buddy reading with because they always forget or never have time to read it. I understand, but it's a book they've chosen for us and I end up reading it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And finishing it. No one talk about. Yeah. See, I haven't had too many like really poor situations. I have had it though where like I've been like ghosted.
Yeah.
Like halfway through a book, I'm just like, okay, like I don't know what's happening here, but here are my thoughts. So if you want to ever respond, so that's only happened to me like twice, and not that it's terrible. Like we all have our thing, but yeah, I think if you're going to buddy read with somebody, especially someone that isn't like a really close friend, because sometimes we'll do that as booktubers. We'll be someone will request a buddy read with us, and we'll say sure, and then you start and like and it's not like easy to press them because they're not really like a close friend, so it's kind of disheartening because you do put that time and effort into finding the book and reading the book and putting your thoughts together, and then but if anyone's wondering, Jess is a great buddy reader. I buddy read with her. I think, have we done 2 books? Or just 1? I feel like we've done 2. I don't remember.
I feel like it is 2 for you guys. I don't know why I think that, but yeah.
I feel like it's 2. It's been a lot. I mean, I've been on BookTube for like 5 years, so I've done a lot of buddy reads. I know I've done multiple buddy reads with a couple of people. I feel like we've done 2. We did Orphan Train, right? And then didn't we do another one before that or after that? Maybe I'm thinking about something else. I don't remember. Oh yeah, 2. What was the second one? I can't remember now. I think it was Orphan Train and I don't. Oh yeah. Abby Jimenez.
Oh,
You're right. Yeah. So it was Orphan Train was the historical fiction, and Abby Jimenez was
Part of Your World. That was
the Part of Your World. Maybe it was that. Yeah. Because I think that's the only one I've read from her. Or Truly Yours. Yours Truly. I've read both of those. Yeah, I read 2. Yeah, because there's 2. Maybe we did the second one. Yeah. Anywho, doesn't matter. Jessica's a great buddy read. She's awesome. So, okay, let's do another reading sprint, and we'll do another 30 minutes because that seemed like a good. I liked that. That felt good. And when we come back, we'll decide. I think maybe we'll probably be closing for that because it'll be almost 11 here. So, so we'll do 30 minutes and we'll come back and say goodnight.
That's good. Also, if you get to like chapter 8, there's a bear cub. I feel so bad for this thing. It's awful. And it's all dealt with so casually, and I'm just sort of like, well, that was so hard to read. So
that reminds me of it's like I feel like animal cruelty is really common in like Russian stuff, because in the brothers Karamazov. I literally was just thinking about this like today or yesterday about the cruelty scene, and it's like, why? My thought process was, why would anyone think of that, and why would you put that in a book? Right. And that's Tolstoy.
Like,
so
yeah, and I don't get the point of this bear cub existing and why this is there. I don't understand it. Yeah. Like, it's explained how it got to be there. I don't think it's alive anymore because of what happened. But like, what? Yeah. Why? Yeah. Why is this here?
It's got to mean something. I mean,
maybe.
Hopefully.
Just appears out of nowhere to get abused, and then I don't know. Yeah. So, anyways, yay, chapter 8. Ugh.
Yay, chapter 8.
Yeah.
Nothing like chapter 55.
Maybe I'll just read that.
Inside joke. I told you, just read that chapter and you'll be fine.
I know. Maybe I will.
Oh, thanks, Jessica. Yeah, you have a good night. Kiss all them girls for me.
Thank you. Thanks for recommending us too.
Yeah, you're the best. Love you. Have a good night. Okay. Half hour, that'll bring us to the 40 after the hour, and then we'll say good night. Oh. Whoa, stop breaking things.
I know. I knocked my empty teacup.
Very uncool. Very uncouth.
I know. Hmm.
Okey-dokey. I'm just at the bear part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think I'll probably try to look that up somewhere on the internet and see if there's any discussion on what that whole scene represents.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. I think it's common practice to have wild animals like that. Like if you think about like the Tower of London, how many animals were in the menagerie. People are just so, they're so intrigued by wildlife that the concept isn't there, that the respect to that animal and its natural habitat and its needs. And so when they first mentioned that as a present they got some bear cub from the north, that wasn't a surprise to me, nor was the way it was transported and how it's kind of just like first of all, it's a wild animal. Second of all, it's not going to be a cub forever. Like, what are you going to do when it becomes a full-size bear?
I know. I think what pissed me off the most, I mean, all that whole thing irritated me and pisses me off, even though you're right, like, that's true to lots of things I've read and seen before, and that's just how things were done. But, like, you know what's a bear cub? Like, literally from the wild, your friend murdered its mother, and you thought, well, we'll take it home with us, right? So you know this coming in. Why, as an adult, would you think that it'll be trained to dance and do all this stuff? Like, it is literally a wild bear cub who is motherless that you've just taken in. Why would you think that? And you're pissed off when it's not? Like, I'm sorry, how dumb are you? Like, no.
You don't know what you don't know, is what I'm going to say about that. I just feel like people just don't,
Like, it's a wild animal. It's a literal wild animal. Why would it be trained in anything? Like, ugh.
I think that's what is interesting about reading, especially fiction, because what this for me does is I want to think like, okay, at what point in time was there like law enacted that certain animals could not be kept as domesticated animals? So like that's where my mind goes. Like, okay, now I want to kind of look this up and like find out more. So like that's where the learning part comes in. So I think that's fascinating, because again, this is like 1913, like long time ago, more than 100 years ago. But at the same time, like, people were that like dumb. I feel like that's dumb.
Right. No, I agree.
An animal that is a predator, like it's not like a little, flying squirrel. Like, this is a predator,
right,
with claws, that is going to become like a 500-pound, huge teeth, huge claws. Like, why would you bring that into your domesticated neighborhood?
I know.
But I don't know. It's dumb. But yeah, I feel like we see that in history all the time, like these wild animals being kept as like circus attraction, like pets, just chained up, made to do silly things, and really just living a life of torture, because they're not being fed properly, they're not being handled properly, they're not in a proper habitat, they're not, I feel like one could say that about zoos too. I mean, you're just trapping animals. And I mean, some zoos, they're like, oh, it's rehabilitation for these animals that have been found in the wild that need rehabilitation. But a lot of the cases, they're born there. And I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and a lot of them, it's preservation of species too. It's a safe and secure place to ensure they're not going to go extinct, because poaching is such a horrible problem.
Yeah,
so,
that's very true. Very true. Well, I mean, like I said, this book is going really fast. It says on my ebook that I'm on page 78 out of 230. So, I mean, it's crazy how fast it's going. So I feel like if I were to read again, it's probably going to be 2 more sittings. So that's a plus. But I still feel like this is a very like fragmented style of writing, and it definitely reminds me of Kafka in the way he writes, but like I don't know what this is supposed to be about. Like I don't understand. Like it feels like it's just like a commentary on life, but like a really brief, ambiguous one. Like because it's hitting so many different concepts. Like it's talking about like all of the like strikes, like so like the unions and that revolution stuff is being picked up on. A little bit of war chatter, considering the relationships between Russia and Japan and Germany and England, and so that's very interesting. But I feel like it's like there's just so much happening, but in such a small, fragmented portion of writing. But I feel at the core of it is this not supposed to be about Nellie leaving? Like it's so weird. I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, I'm on page 142, so I've got less than 100 pages left. So it is fast, but it's really about Frank's life. It's just about Frank and how he's going around, and conversations he has with people who he meets, and pretty much everybody knows now that Nellie is gone. It's been like a day or two later from where you are, I think, and he's run into more people, and someone has asked him for a job, and he sort of played it off by not really answering honestly, but not dishonest either. And so that person's now gone, and there's a new person that's there, and something else has happened, and he's trying to sell the business still, but it's a weird business thing with all these people. So it's just sort of like days of his life, really, is what it is, which I didn't get from the back exactly. I probably should have, but yeah.
It kind of reminds me of Ulysses as well.
Oh man.
Because that it follows Bloom through like a full day basically, but it's so weird because like I mean, and that really it's supposed to like it's a mimic of the Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know how I'm gonna rate this book. I feel like it's gonna be like low.
Yeah, I think it's changing now that I'm past the 100-page mark. It could be a little higher. Like I it's going to be one of those books for sure. Like once we talk about it, the more I think about it, that will definitely change my rating. Absolutely. Yeah. It sort of feels like when I've only read Normal People by Sally Rooney, but when I read that, I think I read it in like one sitting, maybe two. It was like pretty much one day. I got up once to pee and like get water, and then I just came back and sat down. And I thought it was just amazing. I gave it 5 stars. And then as I sat there with the book closed, totally quiet in my house, it's like, well, that was also kind of weird. I don't know, but maybe it's a 4. And I like just talked myself down to a 3 as I sat with it in the next 10 minutes. It sort of feels like this could be the same way. Like this could be like a 2, but I could talk myself up to a 4 maybe. But also this could stay a 3, or I don't know. It just seems like it's going to move around in a weird way. Don't know. If I could stay awake tonight and I didn't have to work early in the morning, I would just finish this right now. Finish this tonight. But yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. I'm glad to be reading something by her, though.
Yeah, I always like finding a new author. So that's why what I love about book club is usually when we get recommendations from our members, it's usually an author I'm not familiar with. So
yeah. And for years I've gotten her and Penelope Lively confused because they're writing at the same time about the same or similar kinds of things, all kind of shorter books. Excuse me, they're both not very well known in the U.S. and like they're fairly prolific people too. So it's sort of strange. Like I accidentally bought Penelope Lively books thinking they're Penelope Fitzgerald books. I didn't catch it until I already like had the books in my hands. So I had to have looked them up, like multiple times, found them on the website, checked them out, paid everything, got them, and I was like, oh damn, like I made a mistake. I keep doing it too.
Yeah.
And like there's fiction and nonfiction. Penelope Lively writes fiction and nonfiction. Like,
Yeah.
it's just sort of funny to me. So yeah, happy to be reading something by Fitzgerald and knowing it's Penelope Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to be rating this. I mean, obviously, wait until the end to figure that out. But yeah, right now I'm feeling like a 2.53.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't really think it deserves a 2.
Right.
But I don't know. Right now I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to think about this book.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. See how it turns out in the end. But yeah, like you said, like when you start discussing it, when we discuss it in live discussion, then it's like it wavers because you're like, oh, okay, those are some good points, which is the great thing about talking about books. So
yeah.
Well, I think with that being said, we'll end our reading sprints here.
Mm-hmm.
To everyone who joined us, thank you so much. It's been a true pleasure to read with you again. For updates on what's coming next, so our poll is live on our community tab here on YouTube, and that has the 3 books that are our selection for March.
Mm-hmm.
That's Island of the Blue Dolphins, Caddy Woodlawn, and The Wind in the Willows.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a choice of those 3. And then for our live discussion of the beginning of spring, that will be on Tuesday, February 25th at 8 p.m. Central Time. And if you're going to join us for our next reading sprints, that will be on March 4th. So February and March share the same dates. So again, will be March 4th, 8 p.m. for the next reading sprints if you want to join us. But until then, we hope you're reading something great, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.